Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my studio. In this lesson, we're going to be painting white peonies. We're going to be using the Catalyst Wedge tool, and I've got out some acrylic paint, and I think you're going to enjoy this lesson. So we did some pink peonies last week or a couple weeks ago, and now I thought we could do a large and loose white peonies on a black canvas, just for something fun to do. Okay, so to start off, I'm gonna give my canvas just a little water spritz. I've just got some plain water in this little bottle, and I'm gonna just look at my lot of color on this palette here, and you can see it's kind of messy, so I also use one of these clean trays from Michaels so I can keep the paint clean. So I'm going to start off with some of this transparent iron oxide yellow, and I'm going to block out just some areas where I'm going to be putting those, I'm just going to underpaint with some of that transparent iron oxide yellow. And I've been using for this, because you use a lot of paint, I mainly use Liquitex Basics, but for this color I buy Golden because it's kind of the only brand that sells it. So this is what it looks like, the Golden Transparent Yellow Iron Oxide. I'll keep that nearby, and I'll try to put a link in the description. So I'm just gonna block in some of those shapes. I've added a little bit of liquid glazing material just to kind of make it so the paint dries a little slower. So I'm using the iron oxide yellow and a little bit of this golden gloss glazing liquid. It just really slows the drying process down a bit, and so I kind of use that to my advantage for when I want this sort of iron oxide yellow underpaint in there. So just kind of really loosely, kind of more or less looking at the size of the flower that I'm getting to here, and also the the space it's taking up on the canvas. So I'm kind of just shaping it as I block in with my Liquitex. I feel it's easy to hold like this, so that edge is easy to work. And I like how there's some smaller flowers kind of going off every which way, and you can kind of have fun adding your own if you want to just sort of create just sort of where you see the space kind of getting where it might need one. That's what I meant to say. I sometimes have trouble talking and painting at the same time. So I'm looking now, just sort of looking at where this is all going. And even if my reference photo has some of these flowers are a little bit further apart, I might want to, like, I'm kind of making them a little closer. I might just put like a bit of one going off the canvas there. And also so while you're blocking in, you can look at kind of the negative shapes too. You see all this bright yellow, and you can kind of look at, well, this is going to be darker, but I might want that space that big, or I might make it smaller later, but I'll use that as a nice way to display some of the green leaves later. So I kind of, although it looks like I'm just sort of mindlessly putting these little kind of marks, I am sort of looking at composition as I go as well. Okay, so now I've got that underpaint. I'm gonna use that same palette, and I'm gonna use some white and add it to that iron oxide and whatever liquid medium that is still on there. And you can see when you add the liquid medium how nice it stays. It doesn't dry up right away on, especially if I'm using something like this. If I was painting on my own, I would just mainly use the Masterson Stay Wet, but I want to show you my mixing, so I kind of, I lift it off like that. So I'm going to just mix a little puddle of all this color here, just to make a nice warm white. And enough of it because I really want to get it for that. It's going to work for most of those. I'm going to add a little more yellow. Just kind of, it's almost like making, moving icing around on a cake. So I've got this nice warm greeny yellow. This is just I used a little bit of the Viridian green hue and some white and that transparent iron yellow oxide. And that's how I got to this. Okay. So now I'm just going to look at that peony, and this tool works really well for peonies, and I'm kind of looking at the direction of how they're going, and there's always sort of a kind of a saucer and a teacup sort of formation when you're dealing with, roses. And if you look at, you just sort of, now you've got that nice layer, so you can really work in some cool marks, really nice peony type marks in there. And I'll just hold this. I'm gonna look at that, and I work fairly quick because I want to make these motions. I'm gonna try to zoom in so you can see close up of it. So just use your instincts, and just sort of, you want to just really, get it in there like that. Zoom back out and keep going. So you can see those nice warm tones, that glowy sort of light that comes when you use that transparent iron oxide yellow, or if you have some Indian yellow, that would work too. And oh, it looks so pretty with that thick paint. And it's just, I haven't remembered to add that liquid medium, but as the weather gets hotter, necessity is the mother of invention. So I've really had to, in Arizona here, even the air just kind of, it was just drying out the paint faster. So I thought, I didn't have time to buy some, you can add that retardant to the paint that actually is designed like on the bottle to slow it down. But this is the same kind of idea, but they don't sell it. They basically, a lot of the mediums are kind of the same thing, just packaged with different names. So I'm just gonna dab these ones because, they're kind of falling off, but already I love that. Now I'm gonna take more white, and I'm really, this is, really keeping it simple here. I'm gonna take more white and kind of, and when I do this, I try to use inexpensive white as well. So to save money, I went to Michael's and just got one of these Liquitex basic jars of white, because you're using quite a bit of paint. And I am going to do some oil. I've been asked a lot to do an oil version, so I've ordered some water mixable. I found Lucas, even though it's a really good brand, can make some less expensive water mixable oil paint. So I'm looking at all these highlights in there. This is, a loose painting, so I'm really trying to, I'm not worried too much about, it being exactly. I'm just getting that nice expressive feeling I'm looking at the direction of some of those petals and going with the flow, and it creates such a nice texture when you use the catalyst wedge. I always use this thing to put gesso on my canvases, and now I'm painting with it, and so it's kind of fun. And I thought people they'll think I'm crazy doing this, because I usually paint, you know, more realistically, but I thought, you know, if I am kind of bored with being stuck in just having to do everything so perfect, I feel like there'll be others with me, and so far I've found that out, that there's a lot of people who've always been hyper realistic that are now saying, you know what, this is really fun. And it is. If you were here to see these textures going on there, it's really worth trying out, because it's just so much fun to see the way the paint kind of blends, and it leaves these different streaks, and it's just so much fun. It's I guess if I got into pouring, some people pour that acrylic paint everywhere, it would give me probably a similar excitement. Just after years and years of painting, you just kind of think, you know, you gotta loosen up and do something different. I usually use a paintbrush, and so this is been really fun to do. And the peony, which is, a lot of my students would say it's a harder flower to paint for them, but using this tool, you can see the marks you can really make some beautiful peony marks with this thing. Ooh, look at that. So I'm just kind of going around and adding some more moves here, more peony strokes. And another thing about this, with the black underneath, you can really make some marks by pulling some of that paint off too, scratching it. All right, so I think I'll get back into the details again later if I have to, but I'm gonna start adding some of that green paint now. Okay, so I'm gonna I bought a big jar of this Hooker's Green from Liquitex Basics, and it's really bright, so you get this really limey green color. So if you ever get a color and you think it's too green, you can go and add a little red of some sort. So you can order I really can't talk and paint. You can add I'm just adding a little dab of that burnt sienna, and you can see how it really grayed it down. And I'm gonna make a green that is a little darker. So I'm gonna mix up some of that Viridian. I used a little Viridian. I just had whatever's on my brush from that mixture. And I'll add that. And then I've got a little bit of this light blue. And I'm gonna put a few of those kind of cool blue greens around, just because I like that blue too. Might even add a little more. And just sort of don't think too hard. And I'm just gonna give this a spray. Don't think too hard, and just sort of, you know, put some of those greens in there. So I'm just gonna put some of those in there like that. And using that cool blue color. They don't have to be, you know, super realistic. So just sort of go with the flow. I can put a stem, a leaf, and I kind of put some of those, you could put a few of those stems in there. But, you know, I'm just going to sort of fill in the space, and and see what happens. I'll get some more of that darker viridian color and just sort of put some of those darker greens in there. And you get that nice high contrast right away with that black, you know. And I'm gonna just keep going here. You know, kind of just kind of wing it, and I'm gonna keep filling in, and then I'll add some different tones of green on top so that there's even more of a variety. So I'll go and add some of that more yellow green. Now that I've got some of that other green underneath, and I can shape a few of them to make them, you know, a little more detailed. Just gonna add some of those little details here and there. And then you kind of think, okay, now that I've got that down there, I'm gonna go and add a few more colors that I think will look good in that mix. So I'm just gonna add a few more of those greens in between. So you could decide you want to add purple, or you want to add a different, you know, whole different shade of blue in there. I'm just gonna wipe off my spatula tool here, clean it up and get ready for the next round. So now that I've got that green in there, I'm gonna add a few new colors here. I kind of like the black in there the way it is, but we'll see. I might add some to the peonies. Now I'm gonna mix up a little of that blue and pink, and I want to create a kind of a purple that will go as like kind of a shadow color. So I'm just trying to mix that up on this little palette here. Just test it out. Put a few of those kind of purples in there in the shadows. And that'll also soften the flowers up a lot too. That really kind of stands out. Okay, and then so you don't want to do too much of the purple, because then it'll just get carried away. Add a little bit here and there, kind of that, a little bit of that magenta in there, and then Okay, I've got more white out, and I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow to the white because I want to have it, you know, a little bit more vibrant. If you add a little yellow or a tiny bit of orange to white, it makes it more vibrant than just pure white. So look at that, we got our highlight color ready to go. And I'm gonna just kind of go with the flow again, you know, you just kind of, the peony is one of those flowers that really works well with loose painting. So I hope you give this a try, this painting style, and let me know in the comments if you do. It's always really encouraging because I'm on my journey of kind of stretching myself to a limit where I can't be such a control freak and control every brush stroke, you know, and so this is good for me. I think also when I go back to my more tight paintings and do like a bird or something where I can't really, you know, I'm not going for this look, I feel like I paint the backgrounds better. I can do other things that I normally wouldn't have been able to do as well. So, you know, it really does help to try new things like this. And yeah, I really appreciated everyone's feedback as I go. I've been nervous to share it because it is something that is so new to me. But all I've had is really positive feedback, so. I'm gonna kind of use my catalyst tool. It kind of builds up around here, so if you push down, it kind of gets that up to the top again. Okay, I'm looking at this one here. I'll put in a little bit more of that lighter color there. I really love the way these peony paintings turn out. Yeah, I sometimes like to throw a few little dabs of the white sort of around. And I'm gonna see what color I'm gonna add next. I'm gonna maybe add some different colors in the green next. Okay, so I'm mixing up some kind of a darker green, and I'll add a little cobalt blue, a little bit of burnt sienna. I just want kind of a darker and more neutral green in there in some places. So just adding in some darker greens. And then you can go and add, you know, I've got some grays. I'll put in a few different little bits of, I've got this kind of gray color from Liquitex Basics. I think it's called Gray Blue. And I'll put some of that in there. You know, using a tool like this really causes you to loosen up, because you really can't get away with, you know, doing anything but that, really. And then a few details. Some of the peonies you see have a little bit of a red streak or something in them. You could take your palette knife, I'm just cleaning it off, and just take a little bit of that magenta, and I'm just gonna put a few highlights, and then that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in to another lesson of Catalyst Wedge Tool Painting. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Don't forget to share it with a friend. And if there's a flower you'd like to paint, leave me a comment below. Happy painting, everyone. Bye.